I had always trusted my daughter's choices. She had always been careful, thoughtful, and, above all, perceptive. So when she introduced me to her husband, my son-in-law, I welcomed him into our home with open arms, believing he was as kind-hearted as he appeared. 4 months, everything seemed perfect. He was polite, attentive, and always ready with a smile when I entered the room. My daughter adored him, and I could see why. But sometimes, life hides the darkest truths behind the brightest masks. One afternoon, my daughter told me she would be out for the day, visiting a friend across town. I offered to keep an eye on the house, just in case, though I honestly had no reason to suspect anything. As the day wore on, I busied myself with chores and old photographs in the living room. It was then that I noticed something strange. A door, one that was usually locked, was slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of me. I hesitated, heart pounding, as I approached it. I had no idea that opening that door would change everything I thought I knew about my family. Inside, I found a scene that made my blood run cold. There were papers, photos, and things I couldn't even begin to understand at first glance. It was clear that my son-in-law had been hiding a life that none of us knew about, a secret that, if revealed, could shatter everything. I stepped back, unsure whether I should confront him, alert my daughter, or pretend I had seen nothing. But deep down, I knew that some truths could not remain hidden forever. And the moment I looked closer at the documents, I realized that this was far worse than I could have ever imagined. Something inside me snapped that day, a mix of fear, anger, and the overwhelming urge to protect my daughter at any cost. Little did I know, this was only the beginning. What I discovered that afternoon would unravel a chain of events that none of us were prepared for. I spent hours staring at the papers, trying to make sense of what I had found. At first glance, it seemed like ordinary documents, but as I flipped through them, my stomach twisted in knots. There were letters, bank statements, and photos of people I didn't recognize. Some were clearly taken in secret, and others showed my daughter's husband in situations that made my blood run cold. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Could the man I had welcomed into my home, the man my daughter trusted with her heart, really be capable of such deception? Every instinct in me screamed that I had to act carefully. I couldn't confront him without knowing the full truth, but I also couldn't ignore it. As the hours passed, I discovered more. Hidden in a drawer, under a false bottom, were even stranger items, envelopes filled with cash, keys to apartments I didn't recognize, and documents that suggested he had been living a secret life for years, one completely separate from our family. He wasn't just hiding small lies, he was hiding an entire reality. My mind raced. I thought of my daughter, laughing and trusting him just a week ago. I thought of the life they had built together, the home they shared, and the future she imagined. If she ever found out, it could destroy her completely. But could I let him continue deceiving her? Could I stay silent knowing what I now knew? As if sensing my hesitation, my phone buzzed. It was a message from him. "Hey, just checking in. Are you around the house today?" My heart skipped a beat. He was coming back earlier than I expected. I had only minutes to decide what to do next. I quickly gathered the most incriminating documents and hid the rest. My mind was spinning. Should I call my daughter and reveal everything immediately, or should I wait, gather more evidence, and confront him at the right moment? Every option felt like a risk, but doing nothing was no longer an option. Then I heard the front door open. His voice echoed through the hall, casual and unsuspecting. I held my breath, clutching the papers, knowing that every second counted. If he discovered I had been snooping, there would be no turning back. He stepped into the living room, smiling as usual, but now everything felt different. The mask of the charming, polite husband was slipping, and I could feel a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. My hands shook as I prepared myself. This was the moment I had feared and anticipated, the moment when secrets would collide with truth, and nothing could ever be the same. And as he moved closer, glancing curiously at the slightly ajar door behind me, I realized that the next few minutes could determine the fate of my daughter, my family, and even my own sense of safety. This was no longer just a discovery. This was a ticking time bomb, and I had no idea how much time I had before it exploded. The room felt impossibly small as he stepped closer, his eyes scanning the living room with a casual curiosity. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but every nerve in my body was screaming at me. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched the papers, unsure whether to reveal them or keep them hidden a little longer. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice smooth, friendly, but with an undertone I couldn't place. I could sense that even though he seemed calm, he had a sharp awareness. Men like him, I realized, were always alert to what others noticed. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I just noticed that a door was open," I said slowly. Thought I should check if everything was fine. My voice sounded weak, even to my own ears. He glanced toward the slightly ajar door, then smiled faintly. Oh, that's nothing. Just some old storage. You know, boxes and old stuff. Old boxes? That casual dismissal only made my suspicion grow. I realized then that waiting any longer might give him time to hide or destroy the evidence. My decision was made, I had to confront him now. I stepped toward the door, holding out the papers. I found this, I said firmly, my voice steadier than I felt. Can you explain why you have all of this hidden? Photos, letters, accounts that don't make sense? For the first time, I saw a flicker of panic cross his face. Just a second, but it was there. He tried to laugh it off. You're overreacting, he said. It's not what you think. But I had seen enough. I had spent hours piecing it together, and there was no way this was a simple misunderstanding. I pressed further. Don't lie to me. I've seen everything. I know there are things about your life that you've been hiding from my daughter, things that could ruin her. His calm demeanor shattered in that instant. I saw anger, fear, and desperation flash across his face, all in a heartbeat. You don't understand, he shouted. I did this for her. For us. For her? I echoed, disbelief choking my voice. You call hiding a second life, secret accounts, and these people you've been meeting for years, doing this for her? He tried to approach me, but I instinctively stepped back, keeping the papers between us like a shield. I won't let you destroy her life, I said firmly. She trusts you completely, and I will not allow you to betray that trust any further. For a moment, he seemed frozen, his mind racing. Then, unexpectedly, he shifted. Maybe you should show her, he said, almost calmly now. Maybe she deserves to know everything. I stared at him, shocked. He wasn't begging, not even apologizing. He was challenging me, challenging the very idea that I could protect my daughter. And in that moment, I realized the fight was no longer just about hidden papers or secrets. It was about who had control over the truth, who would decide her fate, and whether he could manipulate her as he had tried to manipulate all of us. The sound of the front door opening made us both freeze. My daughter had returned home earlier than expected. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. Every second now counted, and every move could change the rest of our lives. I turned toward her, hiding the papers slightly behind me. Honey, we need to talk, I said, my voice calm but heavy with urgency. She looked at me, puzzled, sensing something was terribly wrong. And in that moment, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The confrontation had begun, and the truth was finally about to be revealed. My daughter stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with confusion. What's going on? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. I took a deep breath and slowly stepped aside, revealing the papers I had uncovered. Honey, sit down. You need to see this, I said gently but firmly. There's something you need to know about your husband. Her gaze flicked between me and him. At first, disbelief clouded her face, then fear, and finally a flicker of suspicion. She had trusted him completely, and I could see the wall she had built around her heart starting to crack. I handed her the documents. These are all the things I found while you were out today. I think it's time you know the truth. She hesitated, then began sifting through the papers, one by one. Each letter, each photograph, each hidden account was like a hammer striking her world apart. I watched silently, my own heart aching as I saw the trust she had placed in him shatter piece by piece. He stood there, unable to speak. His earlier confidence had dissolved into silence. The mask of charm and politeness he had worn so well for years was completely gone. Now, all that remained was the stark reality of his deception. Why? She finally whispered, her voice barely audible. Why would you do this to us? To me? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Words failed him. I could see him calculating, trying desperately to find some excuse, some explanation that would make her forgive him, but there was nothing left to say. I stepped closer to my daughter, taking her hand gently. You don't deserve this. Not from him, not from anyone. You deserve the truth, and you deserve to make your own choices from here on. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at him. All these years were lies. He finally spoke, his voice low and almost pleading. I wanted to protect you, to protect us. I didn't think you'd understand. Protect us, she repeated, her voice rising with anger. By hiding everything? By living a double life? That's not protection, that's betrayal. The room was silent except for her sobs. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on all of us. This was the turning point, the moment where lies collided with reality and nothing would ever be the same. She looked at me, her eyes full of pain and confusion, but also trust. What should I do now? She asked. I squeezed her hand. First, you need to breathe. Then, you need to decide what's best for you. You have the right to your life, your happiness, and your safety, and whatever decision you make, I'll be here to support you." Her husband's face fell. He realized the control he thought he had was gone. The power of the truth was stronger than any lies he had told. After a long silence, she stood up, holding the papers tightly. "I need time," she said. "I can't look at him the same way ever again. I need space. I need to think." He nodded slowly, defeated. I understand," he muttered, but I could see the fear in his eyes. For the first time, he realized that his secrets had cost him everything he had worked to gain. As she left the room, I followed her, silently proud of her strength. She was devastated, yes, but she had the courage to face the truth head-on, and I knew that, together, we would navigate the aftermath of this betrayal. That night, as the house settled into silence, I reflected on the day's events. What began as a casual discovery had unveiled a world of secrets, lies, and hidden lives. But in the end, it also revealed the strength of family, the power of truth, and the resilience of a daughter who refused to be broken by deception. Some truths are painful, yes, but some truths are also liberating. And in that moment, I realized that while we couldn't undo the past, we could choose how to move forward. The journey ahead would be difficult, filled with emotional storms and hard decisions, but one thing was certain: the truth had finally been set free, and nothing would ever be hidden again. The days that followed were tense and heavy. My daughter barely spoke to her husband, and he, for his part, seemed to shrink into the shadows of his own guilt. The house, once filled with laughter and casual conversation, felt hollow, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I stayed by my daughter's side, offering support, comfort, and a steady presence she could lean on. Every evening, we would sit together, reviewing the evidence, talking through the lies, and slowly unraveling the extent of his deception. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, and yet strangely empowering. She wasn't just a victim of betrayal, she was a woman reclaiming control over her life. One afternoon, she turned to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Dad, I think I need to make a decision about him. I can't keep living in this in-between. Either he leaves, or I do." I nodded, silently proud of her courage. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you," I said. "You're strong enough to take care of yourself, and you don't owe anyone forgiveness if you don't want to give it." We confronted him together a few days later. My daughter's voice was steady, but firm. "I've read everything. I know the truth now. I trusted you completely, and you betrayed me. I can't stay with someone who has lived a double life while pretending to be my partner. I need to leave this behind and reclaim my life." He tried to protest, to justify his actions, but his words fell flat. She had grown stronger in those days, fueled by pain but guided by clarity. I watched as the man who had once commanded control through deceit now faced the consequences of his actions, powerless and exposed. Packing his things, he left the house quietly. No dramatic scene, no final pleas, just the echo of a door closing behind him, marking the end of a chapter built on lies. The first night after he left, my daughter and I sat together on the porch. The sky was dark, the stars faintly visible, and there was a sense of calm settling over the house for the first time in weeks. "It hurts," she said softly, "but I feel free." "Free," I echoed, smiling gently. "Sometimes the truth hurts because it breaks illusions, but it also clears the path to something real, something honest." The weeks turned into months. Slowly, she began to rebuild her life, piece by piece. She returned to her routines, reconnected with friends she had distanced herself from, and even found small joys in things she had forgotten existed: the warmth of a morning coffee, the quiet peace of a walk in the park, the laughter of family gatherings. Throughout it all, our bond strengthened. We shared late-night talks, silent understandings, and moments of laughter that felt almost rebellious after so much pain. She discovered her own resilience, a strength I had always known was there but which had now blossomed fully in the face of betrayal. And as for him, the man who had tried to manipulate and deceive, he became a shadow of the life he had built around lies. We heard whispers here and there, rumors of failures, broken promises, and solitude, but none of it affected us anymore. His power over us had ended the day the truth came to light. Looking back, I realized that while the discovery had been painful, it had also been a turning point. It taught my daughter the value of trust, the strength of family, and the importance of confronting deception head-on. And it reminded me that protecting those we love sometimes means facing uncomfortable truths, even when it shakes the foundation of everything we thought we knew. The house no longer felt hollow. Laughter slowly returned, warm and genuine. The shadows lifted, replaced by light and clarity. And in that light, my daughter and I found not just survival, but a renewed sense of life, hope, and trust that no betrayal could ever fully destroy. The storm had passed, but the lessons remained, etched deeply into our hearts. And we knew, without a doubt, that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, stronger and wiser than ever before. The days after he left were heavy, almost unbearable. The silence in the house was deafening. Every corner, every room seemed to whisper the secrets he had tried so hard to hide. My daughter moved through the house like a shadow, hesitant, cautious, and yet determined. She had faced the unimaginable, and now she had to navigate the aftermath. We spent countless hours talking. She shared memories, doubts, and the confusion that had built up over the years. "I feel like I never really knew him," she said one night, tears streaming down her face. "Everything we had, was it ever real?" I held her close. "What you felt was real," I told her softly. "The problem isn't your heart, it's the lies he built around it. You loved him honestly, and that matters. But now, you must protect your heart, because no one deserves to live in a cage of deceit." Together, we went through every document, every photo, every hidden detail he had tried to keep from us. It was painful, agonizing, even, but it was also empowering. My daughter began to understand the depth of his deception, but also her own strength. Each revelation was a blow, yes, but also a step toward reclaiming her life. Then came the practical decisions, lawyers, accounts, and separating the life he had secretly built from the one he shared with her. I stayed by her side through every difficult conversation, every phone call, every uncomfortable silence. And through it all, I saw a transformation happening. The frightened, betrayed woman I had first found that day was becoming someone resilient, self-assured, and unafraid to face the consequences of the truth. One evening, months after his departure, she sat on the porch, watching the sun set in a palette of gold and crimson. She looked at me and smiled, a small but genuine smile. "I feel lighter," she said. "It's like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying has finally been lifted." I nodded, understanding completely. "The truth can be heavy at first," I said, "but it's also freeing. Now you can build your life without lies clouding it." As time passed, she began reconnecting with friends she had distanced herself from and rediscovering passions she had forgotten, painting, long walks, and even traveling to places she had dreamed of visiting. Each small victory reminded her that life could be beautiful again, even after betrayal. And then came the moment that showed me just how far she had come. She decided to confront the life he had tried to hide entirely, not out of anger, but for closure. She visited the places he had secretly frequented, the apartments he had rented, and the people he had deceived. She learned the full scope of his duplicity and, more importantly, reclaimed her narrative. She was no longer the victim of his lies, she was the author of her own life. Meanwhile, he faded from our lives. Rumors trickled back occasionally, failed ventures, broken relationships, isolation, but we no longer cared. The power he once thought he had was gone. The fear, the secrecy, the control, everything had dissolved the day we uncovered the truth. Months later, my daughter invited me to a small celebration, a moment to mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. It was simple, just us, the home, and the warmth of family. But the significance was monumental. We had survived betrayal, confronted lies, and emerged stronger. The laughter that filled the room that night was real, unguarded, and healing. As I watched her, radiant and confident, I realized something profound: the worst moments in life do not define us. The choices we make in the aftermath, the courage to face truth, the determination to protect ourselves, and the resilience to rebuild, these define who we truly are. The house, once heavy with secrets and fear, was now alive again. Light streamed through the windows, filling every corner with warmth. My daughter had reclaimed her life, and I had witnessed something extraordinary: the human spirit's ability to endure, adapt, and thrive even after unimaginable betrayal. And in that moment, I understood a truth I had always known deep in my heart: love, honesty, and courage are stronger than lies, manipulation, or deceit. We had faced darkness and emerged into the light, not unscathed, but unbroken. And that, I realized, was the most powerful victory of all. The past no longer haunted us, it had taught us. And with every sunrise, we stepped forward, stronger, wiser, and unafraid to live a life defined by truth, trust, and love that could never be taken away. Even months after he left, the echoes of betrayal lingered in the house. Sometimes, late at night, my daughter would awaken with a start, haunted by memories of what had happened. The shadows of the past were not easy to shake, and healing was not a straight path. But each day, she grew stronger, more confident, and more certain that she could reclaim her life. We began establishing routines to bring normalcy back. Morning walks, coffee on the porch, shared laughter over silly things, and even quiet moments of reflection. Every small ritual became a statement of resilience, a way to show that life could continue, even after deception. One day, while sorting through old boxes, we found a letter he had left behind, never meant to be found. It was a confession, a mixture of regret and arrogance, trying to justify years of lies. But instead of anger, my daughter felt closure. She read it quietly, folded it, and put it away. He had his chance to explain before it was too late, she said softly. Now, it's over. His story ends here, and mine continues. The more she rebuilt, the more we realized that trust, once broken, had to be reconstructed brick by brick. She began setting boundaries with friends and colleagues, asserting herself in ways she had never done before. Every decision, every choice, became an act of reclaiming power. Then came a pivotal moment, a message from him, months after the fact. He tried to contact her, pleading for forgiveness, claiming he had changed. She showed me the message, and I could see the mix of temptation and strength flicker across her face. Should I reply? She asked quietly. I shook my head gently. No, you owe him nothing. Your life isn't for him to influence anymore. Remember why you walked away, the truth. Don't let him manipulate it now. She nodded, and with a steady hand, she blocked him. That simple act was transformative. It was the final barrier between past deception and present freedom. Life slowly returned to balance. She returned to work, reconnected with friends, and even started volunteering at a local community center, helping others who had faced betrayal or hardship. Her experiences had given her empathy, perspective, and a renewed sense of purpose. One evening, as we sat together watching the sun dip below the horizon, she spoke with a newfound clarity. Dad, I never realized how strong I could be. I thought I'd never recover from him, but I was wrong. I can face anything now. I smiled, proud beyond words. You were always strong, I said. He just didn't give you the chance to see it until now. Life has a way of showing us what we're capable of when we're pushed to the edge. Even the house, once a place of tension and secrecy, felt alive again. Laughter returned, mingled with the faint memory of what had been, now transformed into a lesson. The walls, once heavy with the weight of hidden truths, now held warmth, safety, and the promise of new beginnings. Months turned into a year, and one day, as we were cleaning the garden together, my daughter paused, looking around with a sense of quiet triumph. We survived, she said softly. We faced the lies, the betrayal, and we came out stronger. That's more than I ever could have imagined. I nodded, feeling a wave of relief and pride. Yes, stronger than ever. And nothing, no secret, no deception, can take that away from us. The shadows of the past still existed, yes, but they no longer had power. My daughter had reclaimed her life, her heart, and her trust in herself. And as I watched her walk into the sunlight, confident and radiant, I knew the ultimate truth. The strongest bonds are forged not in ease, but in surviving storms together and emerging unbroken on the other side. The story of betrayal had ended, but the story of resilience, courage, and the enduring strength of family had just begun. The house had finally settled into a calm that felt almost surreal after months of turmoil. But beneath the surface, both my daughter and I knew the journey wasn't fully over. Healing was not linear. Every smile she forced, every laugh she reclaimed, was layered over the raw memories of betrayal. Yet, each day she grew stronger, more independent, and more certain that the man who had deceived her no longer had any hold over her life. It began with small victories. She returned to her favorite cafe, where they had once celebrated anniversaries, and sat alone, savoring her independence. She signed up for classes she had always wanted to try: photography, creative writing, even self-defense. Each new experience was an affirmation she was no longer defined by someone else's lies. Then came an unexpected twist. One morning, a lawyer's envelope arrived in the mail, addressed to her. Hesitant but determined, she opened it. Inside were legal papers from her ex-husband's side, attempting to regain partial control of finances they had shared. But my daughter, now armed with knowledge, evidence, and unwavering resolve, was ready. Together, we reviewed every document, double-checking every detail. The law was finally on our side, and this time, she wasn't facing deception blindly. The confrontation in court, though nerve-wracking, was transformative. He tried to manipulate, to twist the facts, to make it seem as though he had changed. But she stood tall, unwavering, presenting the evidence of years of secrets and betrayal. The judge listened intently, and in the end, the decision was clear. My daughter retained full control of her life, finances, and property. The man who had once held power through deceit was stripped of every legal leverage. Returning home, she felt a freedom she had never known. It's over, she said softly, yet with steel in her voice. Completely over. And life began to bloom again, not in the dramatic, instant way one imagines, but slowly, beautifully, like spring after a long, harsh winter. She reconnected with friends, traveled to new cities, and even started mentoring young women facing similar betrayals. Her empathy, born from pain, became her strength. One evening, sitting on the porch, she looked at me with a contemplative smile. "Dad, do you remember the day we found those papers?" I nodded. "How could I forget? That was the day everything changed," she said. "It was terrifying, yes, but without that moment, I'd never have discovered how strong I truly am. He tried to break me, but he only revealed my strength." Her words brought tears to my eyes. She had turned betrayal into empowerment, deception into clarity. She had risen from the ashes of lies and betrayal, unbroken, luminous, and resilient. Months later, a letter arrived at the door, an anonymous note detailing new misdeeds of her ex-husband. But she didn't panic. Instead, she filed it away, a reminder that she was no longer a passive participant in her life. The past no longer dictated her present or her future. Life continued, not without moments of reflection, but now with purpose. She started a small business, helping others protect themselves from manipulation, offering workshops on emotional resilience. Her story, once marked by deception and heartbreak, became a beacon of hope for others. And I, as her father, watched with a swelling heart. The house, once heavy with lies and fear, now pulsed with warmth, laughter, and love. We had survived storms that could have shattered us, and yet we emerged stronger, wiser, and closer than ever. In the quiet of the evening, as we sat together watching the sun dip behind the horizon, my daughter turned to me. "Dad, thank you," she said softly, "for believing in me, for standing by me, and for helping me find my own strength." I smiled, my heart full. "No, honey, thank you. For trusting yourself, for facing the truth, and for rising above it all. You've taught me what true resilience looks like." The past was behind us, but the lessons it carried would remain forever etched in our hearts. Betrayal had struck, secrets had been revealed, and darkness had tried to consume us. Yet we had not only survived, we had flourished. The final truth was undeniable: love, courage, and truth are forces stronger than any deception. And with those forces guiding her, my daughter's life, once overshadowed by betrayal, now shone brighter than ever, undaunted, unbroken, and filled with infinite possibilities. The storm had ended, the lies had been exposed, and in their place, a new life began, one built on honesty, trust, and the unshakable bond of family.